Good morning. So I just want to know a little bit of the procedures here. So if some of you have not used WebEx before, as you enter the meeting, you're going to be muted. And we do that because anybody that's been with WebEx before knows when a lot of people are in a meeting and somebody's unmuted, we can get a lot of background noise. So first of all, can everybody hear me? Can you just give me a thumbs up? All right, good start anyway. If you want to when you want to participate, simply hold down your space bar and that will unmute you temporarily. Keep holding it down. And then when you release it, you'll go back on mute. You can, of course, also click on the microphone icon. When it is red, you are muted. And then just go back after we speak, you can go back to being muted and we can get some clear audio here. Okay. So that's basically the ground rules. First, welcome and thank you for your support of our music program. Seeing how many are in this meeting, it really shows me the great support that we have here in Lynbrook. I want to thank Karen Edelstein for helping organize this and getting the word out through Facebook, and that's been a big help as well. So the way I would like to do this is I'm going to start by just reviewing some of the basic plans and the protocols that we have in place. It's basically what's on the website, but I'll just kind of give it to you in a nutshell. And then I have a lot of questions that were submitted, so I'm going to get to them and answer them to the best of my ability. Understanding, of course, that we are in a time that there are still a lot of unanswered questions. Give me 1 second here. I don't know why. So we'll do that. And we'll just go from there. And of course, if you have any follow-ups or anything that you would like to jump in, you don't have to raise your hand or anything. Let's see if we can just do it by people jumping in rather than me calling on people, and we'll kind of go from there. Okay. Just so you know, also, I know many of you have elementary age students as well. We'll really concentrate on secondary here. But for those of you who have elementary age students, I will try and schedule another meeting if we don't cover most of it here. What I will do is we are recording this meeting, so I do want to let you know that, so there are no surprises, because there are many people who are obviously working right now and cannot participate, but would like to get this information. So we are recording, and we'll post that on the Fine and Performing website after the meeting sometime today or tomorrow, so people can tune in and get the gist of what we've talked about here. So, okay, any issues before we get started with the overview? As I said, you can just hold your space bar down and jump in. No? Oh. Okay. All right. So basically, if you've had a chance to look at the Fine and Performing Arts webpage, you'll see that there is a rather long document, which is the Protocols for Art and Music Program. And there's a second document that also is just dedicated to the high school situation. Okay, so most of this you already know. Art and general music will be push-in classes at the elementary level. So that is something that we've already decided. The NISMA and NAFME, for those of you who don't know, NAFME stands for the National Organization for Music Education. So that is the governing body for NISMA. So in New York State, we're NISMA. Every state has its state music organization, just with different titles and different letters. We're NISMA, but they take much of their guidance from NAFME, since that covers the entire country. We know that instrumental and vocal lessons will be conducted at 12 feet spacing. That is the recommendation that came to us. We did make a change somewhat recently that masks now will be required at all times. I know that has been a lot of the discussion and questions, but we really have to follow the guidelines that come to it. So initially there were studies that said as long as you're 12 feet apart, they felt that that was a safe distance to sing and to play an instrument. And then as more research became available, that has been amended just in the past week or two, that now masks are asked to be worn at all times. I know I put out there about how do you wear a mask and play an instrument. Well, I put a little diagram that, just have a band dedicated mask and put a little slit in it, and they can fit the mouthpiece in there. So these are the protocols that we're going to follow as they come to us. And just so you understand, I'm part of a music administrators organization called NISCAME. NISCAME is all of the music administrators in Nassau County. All right, so everybody who has my same position or similar. We have met just about every single Friday since this hit. So we started in March right after schools closed, and we kept this going through the summer. So there's been a great deal of communication amongst all the districts. Districts are having and conducting different reopening plans, and that's based on the situation they might face, whether it's a facilities issue or an enrollment situation. So there's not a concerted agreement, but there is a great majority of agreement among many of the districts, and we're all following the same plans and protocols. I will let you know, there are some districts that are suspending music education in just about every form. There are districts that are reassigning music teachers. I know in one district, secondary teachers, most of them have now been assigned to teach at the elementary level because they're suspending much of their secondary music education. So there's different iterations all over the island, but there is a general consensus on doing things the same way. And of course, we all are pretty much following the NISMA and NAFME guidelines when it comes to safety in our rehearsals and in our classrooms.
Ms. Pallotta, have you
Yes.
played a woodwind or a breath instrument while wearing a mask? I can't imagine that that's going to be okay.
Okay, so let me answer it this way. Nothing is okay about this entire situation. I totally agree with that. Actually, can we just, well, I'll get to the questions in just a minute, and that actually is one of the initial questions, and I will address that. So yes, I
And
understand.
also, can you also address how cutting a slit in PPE makes it, once you cut a slit in it, it's no longer PPE. So I'm really not understanding these guidelines, but I'll let you explain. Thank you.
I will be glad to explain. I think the understanding has to be here that whether it's something that we agree with or not, these are the best recommendations that have come at this time. There is no magic bullet here, as we know. There is no absolute consensus from either the CDC or state health officials on the best way to do this. The 12-foot distancing is what they look at as the key, but then they have decided to add this extra layer of protection for whatever it's worth. If you do cut a slit in the mask and it's just small enough to fit the mouthpiece and it still has some enclosure, I think if you read one of those studies that are up on the website, it does say that when you play into the instrument, a great amount of the droplets, which is what we're concerned about, do enter the instrument and in many cases stay in the instrument. Now, in some instruments, that becomes a little bit more problematic. And we're addressing that also by using bell covers and things like that. But I'll get to that in full. But I'm not disagreeing with a lot of this that you're bringing forth, and I've heard it, you know, we've all heard it all summer. Yes, is that a great solution? Not an ideal solution, the best solution that is out there right at the moment. So we will do the 12-foot distance at instrumental and vocal rehearsals, lessons, mostly lessons. I mean, rehearsals is a very loose term at this point, since with that distancing, we're obviously going to be compromised in how many we can put in a space. Orchestra, because they can wear a mask during the duration of the ensemble rehearsal or lesson, then they can distance at 6 foot. So we are obviously able to fit more people or more students in those spaces when it comes to orchestra. Rental policy is basically staying the same. Now, we did not collect instruments except for graduating seniors once schools closed. So as of now, all returning students should have an instrument at home. It could be their own instrument, of course, or it could be a rented instrument through the district, or maybe it was rented through a local vendor. So we'll start the year categorizing that situation so we know which students still have their instruments, what instruments they have. And if it's an instrument that is one they're still continuing on and it still fits them, especially in the case of strings, they'll just re-rent that instrument and that instrumental fee will be paid as it always has in the past. And the individual teachers will go through that entire process. We realize, obviously, in some cases that students who have outgrown an instrument, a violin or whatever it may be, a baritone horn, they're obviously going to be in need of a replacement for that. And we will do that through our regular rental policy. The smaller instruments that might have gone from the 5th grade now are in the middle school, those teachers will gather them up and return them to the elementary school so they can be rented at that point. And we will re-rent through our local vendor, which is Universal Music, that's who won our bid. And just, we'll supply instruments as we always have. So if a student needs an instrument, they can rent it through the district. We know that flutes, clarinets, trumpets, those smaller instruments, we ask students to go and procure them on their own. So you can go to any music store that you like and rent that on your own. But everything else stays in place. Larger instruments, they will stay in the school. We are doing our absolute best to secure as many of them as we can based, on our need, but also what the vendor might have. And this way, those students don't have to carry the larger instruments back home. They will stay in the schools, and we'll find a storage place for them. Storage is becoming an issue, as I'm sure you realize, as we add more and more safety protocols to our schools. We tend to use spaces that might have been repurposed now, but we are, looking for every nook and cranny in order to accommodate our music students. All right. In that document online is also a 2-page document, and also within the body of it, of the Q&A that NISMA has incorporated into that on proper cleaning and disinfecting of instruments. This is something that's important for parents because you can help in the cleaning of your son or your daughter's instrument. It's basically nothing out of the ordinary. It talks about what solutions are effective, and they often are things that are around the house, but it's something you might want to take a look at as the instruments come home, because they'll be home for a day or two since we are on a hybrid schedule. It's something that you can look at. Our teachers have disinfecting spray at the end of rehearsals. They will go around and they can spray mouthpieces. It's either Sтерosol or Mighty Mist. Something if you want to buy on your own. It's very inexpensive, but I've purchased cases of those, and each of our band teachers will get that so they can help cleaning the instruments at the end. So at the end of a rehearsal, they will have to leave ample time, and they can go around and give each mouthpiece a spray or two. It takes about 45 seconds to a minute to dry, and then the student can put that instrument, that mouthpiece in their instrument away. And it's good to go for the next time. But you can do a little bit more in-depth cleaning if you wish, and those recommendations are online. Bell covers. So that is something else that has come as another recommendation. So we jumped on that. Actually, today or tomorrow, I'll be ordering that. They'll be here in a couple of weeks. And since I don't anticipate us actually playing for at least that amount of time, by the time we get started and get all of the paperwork out of the way, and that's pretty much the norm. We've ordered bell covers for all of the band instruments. So wherever that sound emanates from, the trumpet bell, the trombone bell, there's different size bell covers. They're 2-ply bell covers with the denier fabric that would make it appropriate for use and without completely stilting the sound. And we'll give each student a bell cover. I would recommend that you wash them at the end of each week. Very easy to wash them, and this way they'll be good to go on a weekly basis. So another layer of protection that we're trying to afford our students in order to get through this time, okay? And the last thing on this Protocols for Art Music does say that until further notice right now, and this is district-wide, all field trips and events featuring large gatherings such as assemblies, musicals, concerts, they of course are suspended until further notice. So the anticipation is there will not be a fall musical at the high school. Whether that can be moved, I can't speak to that yet, because no one here knows where we're going to be in January. But we will take it a semester at a time and see what we can do to replace anything that we may lose. But obviously, without sufficient rehearsal time and, without being able to gather in any way, those large events are going to be suspended at this time. So that's sort of a nutshell of the protocols for the music program. And again, this is nothing that you can't find yourself, and you can read much more in depth about that. Okay, so let me jump to some of the questions that have come in. And then we can open up the floor in a little while. But if you want to follow up on something that, you know, I'm addressing now, feel free to do that. So I won't list a name, but if you want to tell me this one was yours, if you want to follow up, that's fine. First one, I'm writing you because I've been told students won't be able to keep their instruments or art supplies in school. Yes, that is the policy right now of the district. When all of this was decided in meetings over the summer, it was decided that anything students bring to school, we would ask them to bring home. And there's a lot of reasons, right, for that. But of course, the most important reason is at the end of the day, everything is going to be cleaned thoroughly. We have a lot of instruments. And in some cases, if you look at the high school band room, for instance, it's a common area where we don't have individual spots or lockers for instruments. And even if we did, we would want to clean them up. But we would like to clean those closets out and have them available as much as possible, because our custodial staff, cleaning staff is going to go through these rooms. They're going to clean every space. And they're even going to fog spaces. So they're going to need access for that. Another thing is, and this happens often, much more often than you know, because we don't have individual lockers, so to speak, we have had many times where students take the wrong instrument. So now they're going to take an instrument home that's not theirs. And obviously there's cross-contamination issues that might occur. So that's something that we're trying to avoid as well. Thirdly, we are in a hybrid situation, so you know they're not going to have band every single day. Even when we did have band orchestra every single day, you know that when we closed in March, we closed very abruptly. That meant every instrument, basically, except for those who were diligent and took it home to practice, was left in school. So we had to set aside special days to have students come to the schools and pick up instruments. We are looking to avoid that. We hope and pray that our schools will not close again, but we all know the reality that that can possibly happen. So having them out of the building on a daily basis allows the students to have the instruments at home. If we get that call, the governor says, or health officials say we're closed because of whatever situation might occur, we don't want instruments left in school. Can we revisit this later on? Yes, as with everything, we can revisit. But to start the year, we are going to ask students to take their instruments home at the end of the day. So they would come down to their respective space at the end of the day, just as when they're going to start a class. We'll socially distance in the hallways, and Mr. Reynes has marked that out, as has South Middle and North Middle. Pick up their instrument when it's their turn and take it out of the building. When they come in the morning, same thing. If there's a line, they'll just wait on that line, and then they'll bring their instruments to the storage space. If it's a very small instrument, a flute or something, and they want to keep it in their backpack, the day they have been, you know, they're in school and transport it during the day, they are free to do that. So that's where we're at with that situation. Okay. I've been asked, will there still be pull-out band lessons? Yes. Basically, the schedules will look as if as they always have looked. So we're going to continue with pull-out lessons. If you have band, orchestra, or chorus on your schedule that day that you are in school, we have been able to map out rooms to socially distance and hopefully get all of the students. Well, actually, we can get the students that are in. So if it's an A day and it's half the wind ensemble, we can fit half the wind ensemble because we're using the small gym. So we'll be able to accommodate the students in that particular day. Same for B day. So our band and wind ensemble and symphonic band orchestra, we're fine with. Chorus, by mapping out 12-foot space in the auditorium and staggering the way they line up, which is part of the recommendations. We can put enough students in because we have 2 teachers, as you know, there. So the classes are not overly sized, and we can fit those students. All right, so that's something that we can do as well. They will have a sectional pull-out schedule, and the teachers will be provided that, as always. So they will come out of class when it's their time, when they're in school. If they're at home in a remote situation, they will get a reminder through Schoology that you have a lesson in 10 minutes. I think that's the way it works. I know they get a reminder. I'm not sure of the time element. So at the appropriate time, they would leave the class and then they would attend that lesson. So they would know when that's going to be. It would not be a surprise to them. Okay? Hopefully that answers that question. Incorporated this was a quick question about elementary because you know we have suspended early morning band, orchestra, and chorus at the elementary level. Okay, that will be replaced with more lessons, especially for band and orchestra. So the teachers will have lessons during the day, and that's how they will replace that morning. But we can't have full ensembles. We don't have the space at that particular level. Okay. I've been asked about the music rooms, pictures that they still have desks and things in them. We're still, it's amazing as I walk through the buildings, it's, astounding to believe we're going to open in a few days, but I know our custodial facility staff will have every building ready. Our music rooms at the secondary level will still be music rooms. So yes, right now there might be desks stored in the corner or things like that, but they will have ample space to socially distance the way that it's been mapped out. So they will find other places for those types of things if needed. Practice rooms, can they be utilized? No, we're going to start by not using practice rooms. They're very small rooms. If a student goes in and uses a practice room because it's small, it would have to be disinfected and thoroughly cleaned right afterwards, and that's not something that our staff can do during the day. They're also really, because of the time elements involved here and the reduction of the time of classes and passing time and all that, I really don't see a situation where students can have time to come down and actually practice during the day. And it opens up all different issues. So really, if they're of a mind to practice, which we hope we do, that would have to be home practice. And I wouldn't be surprised if a practice room is going to be used for some storage as well. We're trying to do everything we can so the actual conducting of classes and music, especially when it comes to music, can happen. So we're going to use all those spaces. Question about the square footage of the band room. I'm not sure I can tell the actual square footage, but I can tell you it has been socially distanced at 12 feet apart, so we know where those chairs and stands are going to go. I was asked about the numbers that can fit in each room. Is that something that you would like, or, I mean, are you okay the fact that we've mapped out every room, or do you want the actual numbers? Anybody want to chime in? I mean, I can give them to you. I just don't know if they're helpful to you.
Yes, I'd like the actual numbers of each ensemble in each room, please.
Okay, so North Middle right now, the band room can hold 17, the chorus room 13, the orchestra room 17. At South Middle, band 18, chorus 14, orchestra, I believe it's 12. Well, it's 9 through 12, depending on if we can move the racks that hold instruments around. So that's a little up. Now, these are numbers that I did about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I don't think they've changed, but principals and Mr. Seda and the custodians, they're going through everything again and again. But pretty much this is in the ballpark. At the high school, if they're in the small gym, we can fit around 23 to 25 students. All right, so that's a pretty good number using the small gym, and that will be used just for the symphonic band and wind ensemble rehearsal. Chorus, by sitting in the auditorium seats and using every seat at a 12-foot distance, 20 to 23. I'm not sure if we're going to use the very back, but 20 to 23. Orchestra, if they are in the auditorium on stage, 20, because it's only 6-foot distancing. And that's with the curtain open, stretching out to the apron of the stage. They may be able to hold some rehearsals, in the gym stage, and that would hold a few extra, that would be 24. But I think 20 would suffice if we're on a hybrid situation. Okay. So that's basically what we can hold at this particular point. Any questions about that? Okay. So the issue of masks, and a lot of questions about that. Do the kids always have to wear masks at 12 feet apart? Because I know some things say or mask and mask. Right now, the absolute recommendation is masks at all times, whether it's 12 feet apart or 6 feet apart. Okay. Now, obviously, we understand the difficulty in having a mask on during a full rehearsal. One thing to remember now, if these classes are, by the time they get in, socially distance, get their instrument, get to the space where the rehearsal or the lesson is, unpack their instrument, do all that needs to happen to get prepared, and then, of course, leaving time at the end. Spray the instrument if that's pertinent to that particular group, pack the instrument, socially distance to return the instrument. It's no secret that it's going to be a short rehearsal. Maybe they'll get in 10 or 12 minutes of playing, maybe 15. That would be wonderful, but a lot has to happen. I'm sure as we go through the first few months, this will get better and better. But I think we all agree, September, maybe early October, as everybody gets used to these new protocols, it's going to be a little different. Okay, so first time I went to Costco and they made us line up, everybody was confused. You have to have a cart, you didn't have to have a cart. You have to stand here, you can stand with your wife, you can't stand with your wife. It went back and forth. But you know what? We got used to it very quickly. I trust the same thing will happen here. So we're not looking at a 30-minute time element of them wearing a mask. Our teachers will be very cognizant of this, though, and they will provide mask breaks if they feel they've gotten to that point. Now, a mask break does not mean just sitting there and waiting. Other instruction can obviously take place during that time, and I would expect all of our classes will have different components to them. They will have performance components where the students will actually play or sing, but will obviously have to supplement that curriculum. It will be a music appreciation / history / general music / what do you want to talk about today? That type of a situation. We want to keep the students engaged. We want to keep them interested and having a good time. We want to provide music instruction, but it has to be a total package because we know that we can't just do one thing like we've done before. All right, it's going to evolve, and that's a good thing. They will get their music instruction, but they will get many different aspects of it. So when we talk about wearing masks all during the entire rehearsal, understand the entire rehearsal is not the rehearsal that we're used to. It's really a transformation of what we've had in the past. Okay. I know this is a big topic, so before I move on, anybody want to jump in about questions about this?
I have a mask question. There are specialized masks for instruments where the mask hole seals around the mouthpiece. Has there been thought about either purchasing those so we can buy them or providing some guide? I've seen some college marching bands are using them. Thanks.
To be honest, we haven't, and my colleagues, because we just talked last Friday, we haven't seen those. What we have seen, there's one company that came out with a mask that actually has the opening and then the little flap that comes over it. And we looked at that. We don't see it's any different than what we're proposing now because there's still, actually there's even more of a space because the opening of the mouth is quite large. If you can send me information on the one you're speaking of, my colleagues we have not seen that particular style, but I'll certainly be glad to look into it and see if it's viable. I will say this, and I'm not poo-pooing any of this. A lot of companies have jumped on this bandwagon. They're in the business to do two things, help us and make money. So we have all seen iterations of masks that we just look at and say, this is not going to work. We've seen iterations of covers for certain instruments that actually are like putting a hefty bag over the entire instrument, having the student reach their hands in and play that way. Not something I think our students would ever want to do. We've actually tried one out and it's not real effective, and you do perspire a lot when your hands are in there. So they're coming out with a lot of things. Anything that would work, I'm willing to obviously take a close look at, but there's a lot out there. There are belt covers that have come out that are dirt cheap, but they're dirt cheap for a reason. They don't meet any standards. They're only one ply. I know of one district that's actually putting pantyhose on the bells of instruments. I don't know. Is it effective? I can't speak intelligently about pantyhose, but or stockings, but that's what they're using. So a lot of things are happening. The company I'm looking to order from now is very reputable. Southeastern Apparel is one, McCormick's is another, and we're seeing, but the product seems to be very similar. But these companies have been around for a very, very long time. In fact, we've gotten our uniforms from one of them, so that's what we're going with now. But I guess to go back to your question, if you have any information or any of you on something that comes your way that you do a little investigating on and think it's viable, send it to me. Absolutely. I'll share it with my colleagues and we'll see.
Mr. Pallotta?
Yes.
So it's Ivy Riley. We spoke yesterday and I told you that my son has a bell cover and the mask. I don't know if we can see it on, if I put it up to my camera. If you guys can see it, but we ordered these. They were $35 a piece for the set. It covers the bottom, the bell, and the mask is 3 different layers, and it actually covers your nose, and it goes further down than the mouth, and then it covers the chin underneath, so that there's a space for your mouth to be open and for the instrument to go in. This is specifically made for an oboe or a clarinet. I know they do make one similar for a flute that has like a sideway type of thing, but they're very expensive. These are $35 each, but they're washable and they're heavy duty. But this is just to bring up the issue that my son was bringing up, was that on an oboe specifically, most of the moisture comes out of the keys. So how is that actually? And clarinet and flute, he's saying. He's sitting right here, but he won't speak.
Right. So woodwinds, what we're probably going to do, and we're fortunate that we have large enough spaces. In fact, this will be part of my discussion with my band directors Thursday. We will look to space them even further. They have not come, and they have not come up with a solution that is viable for these instruments, as well as just covering a bell cover on a trumpet. It is the nature of the beast. So we're going to have to space them even further. The bell covers we're ordering, they will be adequate for the bells, and some of the moisture, does come. I mean, I have to swab the bottom portion of my clarinet and bell every time because yes, moisture just come out of that. So that's half the battle, maybe even more than half the battle. But yeah, some of the moisture might escape through the tone holes. So we're going to have to move them even further in order to accommodate that, and that's something we'll look to do. And our spaces. The numbers I gave you really accommodate more than what we will need to put in those rooms because we are in a hybrid situation. So we should have adequate space, especially for the woodwind situation. We don't have a lot of oboes in the district, as you know. So it's, flutes, clarinets, those we're going to have to move a little further out. The masks that you point out, I'm not sure. I mean, I haven't worked with them. I don't know how much more of an advantage over the ones that we're actually going to, be using. It's the same principle though, right? You just cut a hole in it. And that's what that is.
No, it's not just a hole, because it's the fabric is layered so that it's not just a hole. Because if you cut a hole, you have an opening. These have a cover. You have a hole and it's covered over up to your chin. I'm sorry, I'm in my office, or I could bring it to you and show it to you. But it covers over the entire thing. So, which is what makes it a little less comfortable, because it's not just at your mouth. Now you have the covering up the instrument too. So you're trying to play it in the kind of like this, and it's muffled, right? So that's what he's complaining about, is that the reeds are going to get stuck in there. I mean, I know he's one of 2 oboes in the district right now, so it's not your big issue, but I think it's the same with other woods. They're going to have that same feeling of confinement. That's it.
Okay. Well, look, for certain instruments, it might be an advantage. I'd be glad to take a look at it. I will agree at $35 per times, hundreds and hundreds of students. It's something, not my money, but I am never adverse to spending for the right thing if we have it. But yeah, I mean, I'll be glad to take a look. Like I said, anything that we feel is viable in the situation.
I have a kid.
Say again?
I'm not a proponent of spending $35 per child. If it's a parent wants to have the expense. What I am a proponent of is that it's a mask that covers, that doesn't do away with the whole concept of PPE.
Okay.
As Allison Goodman Greenberg was saying before, if you keep the PPE open, it's not PPE. It's like when you wear a mask here, it's not PPE. It's the same thing.
I understand that, but remember, we're talking a very small opening, just enough for the mouthpiece to fit. So, as we talk more, I see people doing this. It's not this. It's, the width. I know instruments. The width of a mouthpiece, whether it's trumpet or even up to tuba, is not very wide. Again, not a perfect solution. It's what we have now. As we go through, yes, something else might come to light that we feel is more advantageous. And that's something that, we'll look at then, and I will give parents options if it's something that would have to come from the parent. Willing to look at anything. Okay, so that's where we're at with Mass.
Mr. Pallotta, another question.
Obviously, in talking with, all my colleagues, and just to let you know, and this does not make it the best situation, but right now, this is what we have. I have been in close contact with many districts. We're all doing the same thing, Syosset, Manhasset, surrounding areas, the president of NISMA, or was last year. And this is what we've come up with so far. But again, willing to move the needle, whenever it needs to happen. So if you would like to share, please do so.
Mr. Pallotta, a question came up in the chat. Hello?
Yes, I hear you.
Hi. A question came up in the chat about students who want to drop band or drop one of the performing groups this year. Can they join back again next year?
Well, I guess my first question is, what would be the reason to drop? Is it just the situation we're in?
I'm seeing a lot of people in the chat asking that, and I'm thinking it's because of the masks. If they find them uncomfortable at the beginning and they decide they can't do it, can they drop? And if the music groups are different next year, can they decide to, or can they join back?
Our practice has been, especially for instrumental, that the student dropping for a year re-auditions to see if they are at a proficiency level. I can't tell you what that proficiency level is going to be, but I think the overriding concern here is I would ask parents to encourage their students to at least stick with it and see how it goes. I think our music teachers shown how accommodating they can be. And that's something that is at the very top of the list in my discussions with them, and will certainly be in my department meeting with them Thursday. Flexibility and accommodations is the key here. It's a very, it's a quickly changing landscape. I totally understand thinking about it. How am I going to play with a mask? How am I going to go to band? It's not the same. How am I going to play in this? Yeah, if I was, a 14-year-old, I'm going to think the same way. I would ask parents to at least encourage them to start it and maybe cross that bridge when we come to it. If there's, a full-scale movement that this is not going to work, yeah, then I have, part of my job is to readjust and see where we can go and make this fun and interesting for them until we get through the year. I really would hate for this program we've all worked so hard to build to where it is to, in a year's time or in 6 months' time because of a situation that, we're trying to handle. I have great hope that we can get through this. I have great hope that our teachers will make these classes enough that they will stick with it. Like I said, stress this, the performance aspect, fortunately or unfortunately, is going to be only, a component of what their actual class is going to be. We're not looking towards any major performances to be, the pressure is off in that sense. It might be on us in another sense, right? To keep the students engaged, to keep them in the program, but going to be a different type of teaching and learning, just as it's going to be in all your academic classes. It's not going to look the same. Same thing with, but I do think start and let's see where we end up in a few months. And they might say, all right, not so bad. I can hang in there.
So speaking of academic classes, the way that things are going to be structured this year, have you given any thought to making band lessons on days when the kids are virtual? That way they could actually play without wearing a mask while they're at home, and they don't have to be pulled out of classes because they're only in class every other day. And I think being in person in their academic classes is very, very important this year.
It is, but I mean, honestly, and I think we've seen this, and I understand a faction of the district has chosen to be full remote. Music instruction in a remote situation is just not as effective. Even though we can't be, and we can't be hands-on in the true sense, having a student in the room is still a big advantage. I know we've looked at the schedule backwards and forwards, but I think the decision across the board has been made to try and keep things as normal as possible. And normal as possible, even in this sense, does mean. Now, one thing to understand about these pull-out lessons. You know that we structured lessons in the past that students would go through a rotation. So at best, would miss the same class maybe once a month, in some cases once every 4 or 5 weeks. Well, I can tell you, and common sense would obviously tell you, because we have to socially distance in lessons and because we can only put so many students in a room, these lessons are going to be spread out even more so. It's not a perfect situation, but if they miss the same class once every 3 or 4 months, that's going to be a lot. I don't see them doing that at all because we have to elongate the schedule. So there's going to be a long time between them coming out of certain classes. And then, of course, some classes might end up on a lunch period. We still will have extra help. It will have to be scheduled in advance. But the same holds true for all our lessons. The student has a class, whether it's a test, a quiz, or a class that the teacher says, look, I need you to be here. Our music teachers will accommodate, and they will find another way to make that up. I'm going to have to reduce the lesson requirements. It's just the way that it is. It's not going to be the same. So I think all of that said, the amount of class time that they're going to miss, academic class time, will be even more minimal than it's been in the past.
Mr. Pallotta,
Yes.
question. So since we still are, right now the plan is to, still be pulling them, and these lessons are going to be small group and not full band anyway. For instruments that are able to be played outside, can some of those lessons just take place outside? If it's an instrument that you can take outside.
We
What are
won't
your thoughts on that?
outside. I know some districts are doing that. They've actually purchased tents, but that's good for about 6 weeks, as they admit, and then they're all going to be back inside anyway. Outside actually poses certain problems. If you read those studies, to depend on the weather, the amount of humidity, the way the wind is blowing, and things like that. Yes, can we take students outside? And I think principals might have addressed that with even some academic classes. I don't believe that's being ruled out. And if you have a class of 2 kids, 3 kids, and you can find a space outside, I have no issue with that. I think it's something that will alleviate some of the stress in that as well. And until the weather gets too cold. Now, remember, now it's carrying out the instrument, carrying out the music stand, a clip if it's a little windy. So there might be some issues involved, but there might be some absolutely gorgeous days that we can.
Yeah,
High
that's
school,
what I mean.
Going to be a bit of a problem at the high school right now.
Construction.
There is no outside per se, but looking at south, looking at north, yeah, I certainly see possibilities there.
Yeah, and that's my suggestion, not a complete, overhaul of the policy, procedure. Just if it looks great, take a small group and go outside, if it's a nice day.
And then that falls into the whole flexibility things.
Right.
So much is going to be left to the teachers to use their judgment. Now, of course, we will have obviously constant discussions about it. But yeah, if the chorus teacher says, let's go outside and sing today and we'll do a cappella for 5 or 10 minutes, sure, absolutely no issue. Or the instruments as well. Chorus is the easiest thing. Let's bring them and a pitch pipe and you can sing.
Mr. Pallotta, will Tri-M be happening this year? Do we have any info on that?
In some way, shape, or form, yes. Mr. Walvogel is returning as advisor. I don't know if you know, Mr. Walvogel is now full-time in the district. He's the, we have chorus teachers at the high school, so him and Mr. Weiner. So he's going to actually spend half his time at the kindergarten center this year, but it was a way to get him into the district full-time. I needed a kindergarten music teacher, so I'm very happy about that because he's exceptional. He will again advise it. And same with the National Art Honor Society. They're looking they're looking at ways outside the box thinking of doing things, whether it be in the community. There are certain events we can still hold, that the social distancing aspect can be accommodated and all of the rules and regulations that we're trying to follow. But yes, there will be a tri-M.
Okay, and do you have any advice for tutoring this year? Because I know tri-M, a part of tri-M is tutoring. Will there be any
Yeah, and
guidelines on possibly virtual tutoring more?
Yes,
than
if we
in
did
person?
tutoring, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. It would be virtual.
No.
I would not be comfortable with two students in a space,
Right.
because of their diligence. I'm sure one might get carried away and approach the other, and we're trying to avoid that as much as possible. Our teacher obviously would be cognizant of that at all times. So yes, we would still look to sign up with that tutor lesson procedure. The only thing I'll tell you, it's much different. Normally, that tutoring situation came into fruition because of the need for help for NISMA, all county, things like that. Well, all county has been canceled, all state has been canceled. No word yet on NISMA, but there will not be an in-person NISMA. I can pretty much tell you that. So they're looking at other aspects of how to hold a NISMA festival. They looked at last year recordings, having students send in recordings of their solos, but unfortunately that makes for a very unlevel playing field, because what recordings, and we've seen that with our own attempts at virtual performances, which I was very proud of. But if you were part of the behind the scenes in order to make that look as good as it did, it's quite formidable. So we know that students in some districts, and since this is these are state festivals, just do not have the technical capabilities, Wi-Fi band or whatever, in order to do something like that. So NISMA is really in a pickle again, and to try and get a festival going. So that just ties into the tutoring. That was most of the students that signed up for the tutoring wanted help with their NISMA solos and things like that, and it doesn't look like those are going to happen again. So, to be seen, but that's where we're at in that situation. Okay. I haven't read the chat because I'm trying to address these, so I don't know if there's anything else there. I think I've spoken to just about everything that is in the questions that were sent, and thank you for sending them.
I have a question.
Shoot.
Yes, my kids are
Not
going to
literally.
be full remote this for the first marking period. You might have addressed it. I just want to clarify. Will they be able to have virtual? They're an orchestra. Will they be able to have virtual orchestral lessons and sectionals working from home?
Yes.
Okay.
This is, let me expand on that. The lessons will be remote lessons, so that's not an issue, because we're attempting to keep them as independently remote, but that might not be possible. So what they would do is just enter into the lesson at the prescribed time, right? So if that lesson is a fourth period violin lesson, and that's your group that you've been assigned to, that's when you stream into that lesson. The same thing in the bigger, ensembles, they would be a part of that. Now, the issue is a technical issue. They cannot actually play and be heard because there are latency problems. So obviously, if you're a beat behind, if you're a 16th note behind, you can imagine. But
yeah,
what the teacher can do is at certain times in the lesson, this could be one of those times when,
Hola,
let's say that
¿cómo estás?
Mrs. White gives them a 3 or 4 or 5 minute mass break. Well, actually, orchestra is not such a big issue, but whatever. You understand the principle.
Sure.
That's a time when the teacher then can just those students at home. Oh, can we just get everybody to mute one more time? Thank you. Actually, I can do it from here. Give me 1 second.
Me quiero salir a caminar.
There we go. Okay. So there are times during the lesson, whether it be a mass break or whatever the situation, where the teacher can then solely engage the students that are home in the remote setting. And then they can actually play and the teacher can hear them. So if you've got 3 violinists at home, if they're comfortable, Mrs. White can ask them to play a, 6 bar thing. So the interaction can happen in that particular way. so they don't feel like they're being left out. But what they cannot do is play and have their audio on if you're doing a full section, because that would actually, I guess if the latency was long enough, it'd be just a nice round, but other than that. So that's how we're going to handle that situation. Right. Let me see. Look at my notes while you guys are thinking of more questions.
Pallotta, I have a question for you about studio art. We have to
Yes.
buy an enormous amount of supplies. Is there going to be some kind of schedule of weeks when the kids bring these things in? I can't imagine my daughter having to bring all these supplies as well as her other supplies and her tablet and her instrument on a daily basis.
Great question. Yes. They will bring in the supplies that are just connected to the particular project that they are going to be working on. So it is not bring everything every day and let's see. Our teachers will obviously have their curriculum planned out, their projects planned out. So if you're doing pencil and ink, that's what you're bringing. If you're doing, pastels, although I think painting might be at a bit of a minimum this year in some classes, but so yes, in a nutshell, they will be asked to just bring in the particular items that they would need for that project. And then when they move on to the next project, they would make that change. Otherwise, yeah, too much stuff to bring in at one time.
Yeah.
So little things, the same thing would happen in our music classes with music. Every student will get an individual copy of every piece that the teachers will work on. So there's no sharing of music. There's no sharing of anything, really. So it's not like they would have to bring their entire folder every time. Mr. White might say, we're going to work on this piece next time, or these two pieces. So it's, just going to be copies of music or the original sheets, fold them in half, throw them in their case. That's what they would bring. We'll give them folders as in the past, but at the high school level, we won't give them those leather-bound folders because we don't want them stored. So we have paper folders and they can have their music. Another option, whenever available, I know there's some music teachers in the audience. Some of our companies allow for electronic downloads. And if that's the case, then students can access the music electronically, print it out and have that piece, or even, if they're home, put it up on their computer or iPad and play, along with it at that point. The only thing. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Is there any hope that we can do some kind of, socially distanced performance, maybe videotaped in the gym in the high school that can be shared at like Christmas or, the holiday break, or, different stages?
For those of you of a certain age, that is the $64,000 question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It probably dominates a full hour of every NISCAM meeting I'm in on Friday. Look, we understand we all want to provide those opportunities. Obviously, there's pros and cons. I mean, the cons are simple. At a socially distance of 12 feet, how does a band actually play a piece together, have it recorded in any effective way? Well, it just can't be done. I mean, nobody has the technical capabilities. You look at our small gym, we'll have half the group in there, and they'll be 12 feet apart. So in Mr. White's podium in the last row, it's quite a distance. They will actually use microphones and a portable speaker in order to be heard, because I certainly don't want them yelling or, using their real teacher voice. But the table, we're just not sure what's on the table. You saw what we were able to do at the end of last year for our seniors. Was it what was hoped? No, but at least we did get them to play. We did get them on a virtual performance. Mr. Walvogel worked his magic and helped put that together. So I won't rule it out. I won't rule out, an outdoor situation. But again, my great hope is the 12-foot distance will be relaxed as we go. I don't know if that's possible. I wish I was friends with Tony Fauci, but I'm not. We'll see where that goes. But I would say, at least for our seniors, we look for solo opportunities where we can record them and maybe string them together in a virtual situation. So we can have a brass night or a woodwind night and then a chorus night, and they can each sing solos or maybe some duets and put that together. and then we'll help compile that. So not ruling anything out. This is moving so quickly, though. As you see, I put that entire document out in July, and by the August, had to amend, 20, 30%. And to be honest, we went the wrong direction. We went from 6 feet to 12 feet and everything. We went from no mask to mask all the times. So whatever we can do, we will do. We've got a lot of good heads in the music department. I will say, if things don't change to a great extent, I will focus on seniors. We will focus on seniors. It's their last time with us. So that would be our priority. And, with the hope that next year, our other 3 classes and our middle schools, things will be better.
Thank you.
Mr. Pallotta, somebody asked in the chat about, and I guess you've probably discussed this, but just in case, shields versus mask, or is it too much of this droplets going out the bottom? Is that the issue? Face shields
One
versus
of the
masks.
funniest department meetings I attended was the last one when we tried shields and instruments. It was actually comical. The shields, and to be honest, and I've read a lot, the shields are not as effective. The shield has to come down at least to the chin in order to be effective. And the opening now is very small. There's no way to get the instrument. Watching Mrs. Quartararo trying to fit a flute and then another instrument under that shield, it just didn't work. So yeah, something we absolutely considered. I know of no district, and this is the last week, that is using shields because it actually makes the problem, it exacerbates the problem rather than help it. Okay. Hopefully I've addressed everything, at least for today. I'm sure when you get off this call, there'll be 10 more things you'll think of. You know where to find me. Not that I'm cutting it short. If anybody has anything more to say, but I feel like there's a little lull here. I'm going to bring a lot of what we talked to that is pertinent to our music staff. My music department meeting is Thursday afternoon. So we will, whatever we've talked about is something that I certainly want them to be aware of. Of course, as I told you, this is being recorded. So as soon as we can get it up on the Fine and Performing Arts webpage, we will do that. And you can, let any friends know that if they want to tune in, unless you want to just bring them up to speed, but we can do it that way and they can get the gist of what was said today. Okay.
Just sort of one more thing.
Last thoughts? Yeah.
Is there any way you could provide some guidance as to cutting the masks, at least for now, until that's figured out? Like, because what you said was the masks should only be a certain size, and I don't think anybody really understands what you mean. So if there's something that, a picture or something having to do with measuring the instrument's mouthpiece or something like that.
Yeah. I think I put the picture, didn't I put the 2 diagrams of the mask? If not, I can certainly do it again.
Maybe I missed it. I'm sorry.
The one thing, Ivy, you have to understand, it's not a one size fits all. And I don't mean that facetiously.
That's what I'm.
It depends on the particular, right. It depends on the particular instrument. But the best way to do this is not coming from me district-wide, because we'd have to put every instrument. Each band director in their class, we're not asking students to bring instruments in the first day back. I mean, in that case, it's sort of business as usual. We need a few weeks to get all of our logistics in order. If nothing else, we want to go through the protocols of how to get the instrument, how to get to the small gym, how to get to the band room, how to get to the auditorium. That's going to be first. Sound instrument. One, everybody is comfortable with that, because I don't want that burden of them doing that and still carrying a trumpet in their hand or doing this. So we'll walk through the paces that are necessary to get them comfortable in the space that they're going to be in. And then they will go through all those other things. How are we going to spray the mouthpieces at the end? How are we going to, and part of that will be, all right, so you play trumpet, your opening should be X number of time. And they could actually take their mouthpiece, hold it up. Basically, if you take the mouthpiece like a brass, hold it up, you'll see a little indentation. You can cut that with, all right? So we'll do that on an ensemble by ensemble basis, so each teacher can address each student individually. I think that's the most productive way to do it. All right. For me to put up a picture, it's gonna open up the same questions. But I understand the basis of your question, because it's not something anybody is used to doing.
Well, that makes sense. And so I'm just clarifying, the kids are not bringing their instruments to the first day of school.
No, we have never done that. No, students have always, we've started the process first because there's so many other things to do. Getting the instruments in their hands, first of all, I understand, especially at the high school level, a lot of students own their own instruments, but that's not the case throughout the program. So we start all together. We started lessons the second full cycle. I'll push the third full cycle. Again, I want to alleviate as much pullout as possible. And also, I sat and watched a video that Mr. Leone put together on how difficult it is to actually construct a sectional schedule in these circumstances with a hybrid. I'm glad he's smarter than I, because I don't think I'd be able to do it. It's a mathematical puzzle. It really is. So we'll need a little time to work all that out. In the meantime, though, there will be instruction. A lot of it, as I said, is how do we operate these protocols and logistics in our situation? How do we get from point A to point B and back and forth? That'll be the first few weeks.
I just want to confirm that that's true at the high school level where we have wind ensemble, where a lot of times they're expected to be able to jump right in right from the very beginning because you're more experienced.
Right. And that is normally the case. That won't be the case here.
Okay, thank you.
All right. High school might be able to get started in a week or so.
But not the first day.
No, not the
Correct.
first day. Not the first day.
Okay.
And I'll make sure that word gets out.
You just, and especially with the, I believe that cutting of the masks for the mouthpieces, I think they really do need that direction. So, all right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Totally agree. And look, the first days are going to be stressful enough, right? We've got arrows and hallways and we've got lines and, and I'm not asking, I don't want them to play a B flat concert warm-up scale on day 2. It's just too much right now to handle. We'll go slow.
Thank you.
Slowly. Okay. Bless you. I have somebody that says they're speaking. No? Okay. It looks like we're good. I think I've answered all your questions, hopefully. Email me if anything pops into your head that you weren't sure of, but we'll take it from there. Thank you so much. I appreciate all the people on this call. It really helps to clear things up, and feel free to share with, neighbors, parents that weren't able to make this. Coming from you, I know they'll get accurate information.
Thank you.
Stay safe. See you soon.
Thank you.